Let's
Good.
see here. We're live. We're up.
Live and up. Hey, good morning, everybody. Dr. Misak here, Pittsburgh Alternative Health Vitalometry, and talking about restorative healing. And so today we're going to have a great show. As always, want to start it with a verse. And it's kind of odd. I love the way this Bible app talks whenever I do these shows and the messages that come across. But today's from 2 Corinthians 10:5. It says, "We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." And I think that's just quite appropriate for what we have going on today. We have a couple guests. We got Betty Reams Hernandez, who's on today, and it's been a long time since we had Betty on the show, and we have Paul Braddock, both of which they were there when it all began. People working with Dr. Carrie Reams. Betty's the younger daughter out of the crew, and Paul Braddock is someone who just walks side by side. Hey, welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Betty, are you there?
I'm here. I'm here.
Right. Excellent. So I just wanted to bring you guys on, tell some stories. Paul, I'm going to have you slide back just a little bit from your computer if you're having trouble hearing it or something. Maybe. Yeah, there you go. So we can see your whole face there.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm just, I just wanted to bring on and I think people need to hear some stories about Dr. Reams and about what went on, and maybe Annie can jump in and give us some ideas as well. But, welcome. And is there anything you want to share personally?
Well, you want me to tell you some of the experiences I saw Doc do?
Please do. Please.
Well, I'll give you a good example. I called him one time with a lady's numbers, age, height, and weight, female, Caucasian, numbers, no eye numbers. And this was over the phone. And she was sitting in the other room on a couch, and she had her elbow on the side of the couch with her hand on her right temple. And Doc never asked a question. He said to me, "Have you noticed her rubbing her right temple?" I said, "I can see her from where I'm sitting, and she has her hand on her right temple as we speak." He said, "Yes, there'd be some pain there. There's carcinoma between the cambium layer and the brain, and it's touching the back of the right eye. Did you notice her eye twitching?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, go look." I went in and I asked her to look at me, and her right eye was twitching. Now, that was over the phone. So the incredible things that he could do with those numbers was unparalleled. I could go on for a couple hours here on different things I saw, but another one that was very noticeable to me was, I'll make it a long story short. A neighbor came to me, asked me if I was still studying with the biophysicist. I said, yeah. He said, well, we brought our daughter back from the hospital here, and they say there's nothing wrong with her, and I'd like for you to test her and see what Dr. Reams has to say. And I said, sure. She's an 11-year-old girl, and I went over to the house. There was something wrong, all right. She was rolling around on the floor, holding her head, screaming. And I said, well, what did the hospital say? And they said there's nothing wrong with her. She's a spoiled brat, sent her home. And I took her numbers, called Doc, and without any hesitation at all, he said, you have a nasty brain tumor on your hands there, Paul. It's flat as a feather. It's 3 inches long, and it's directly under the pons. And if it touches the pons, she's going to die. And it's very close. And he said, if you want to tell them to bring her down here to the retreat, I will try to reverse, but you've got to tell them she may die on the way. And that was a tough thing to tell a family, but that's what I did. And they took her that night that was on a Monday or Sunday, I think. And on Wednesday, Doc called me and said, Paul, we have that tumor reversed. We'll have her back in school in about 6 months. And interestingly enough, that was when she was 11. She was in my office at age 28 with a couple of her children and said, do you remember me? So, he can do things and see things that. And I asked Doc, I said, well, why didn't the electroencephalogram pick up that tumor? And he said, it's flat as a feather. It wouldn't have picked it up. It has to be round for them to pick it up. And that was over the phone. So I could go on and on. Another one that really baffled me was I did a lady's numbers one time, and I handed her the specimen bottle, and I just washed it out, and I left the water in it. She did the specimen on top of the water instead of dumping the water out. Well, I got this unbelievable looking set of numbers, and I called Doc, and he went into great detail on the problem that she had, and it was in the brain, a very small tumor in a section of the brain, and the nerve endings had already been taken, and he said that there was nothing we could do because the nerve endings were gone. And I got to thinking about it after I left, and I went back to her house, and I said, did you dump the water out of that specimen bottle? And she said, no. And I said, well, give me another sample. She did, and I called Doc, looked like a different set of numbers to me. And he said, well, why did you call me back, Paul? Can't you see the pattern? It's nothing changed from what I told you. So the word pattern has always stuck in my mind from that day on. He said, can't you see the pattern? And I said, no, I can't. And but the reading was exactly the same. It was the same pattern. And I found that very, very hard to believe, but very true. And just things like that, I could go on and on and on.
That's the kind of thing where I'd be saying, Paul, can you give me those two sets of numbers? I'd be like, I want to look at that and see if I can figure out. Because the one thing I do notice is patterns. And that's one of the things that I think that I want to learn, try to figure out how to teach this, because but I'm looking at it from, I still see it from that physiological standpoint, whereas Dr. Carrie Reams was giving us it's like, I don't know if you ever seen that movie, The Matrix, where everything's broken down into, into this binary code. And it's like he could just turn around and look at these numbers and piece together exactly, hey, there's a 2-inch tumor 2 inches from the right clavicle, that's pressing on the lung. And they go in and they find it, because at the time that he was telling people this, they didn't even have CT scans. They were just using x-rays, and you couldn't see things like that on x-rays. So they do exploratory surgery, and sure enough, the stories were that they were exactly where he said they would be. And so, so Mike, one of the things that I would ask is, like Betty, you can tell a story about them raiding down in Georgia and walking away with boxes upon boxes of historical information. Did he have any type of written, link that would have helped us to connect on that level? Oh, we just lost Betty.
Oh. That's well, I asked Doc when he called me up and said he was going to go home. And he told me when he was going to die. And Doc and I had become very close. And I said to him, well, you can't go, Doc, because we can't do these numbers without you. And he said, Paul, did I not teach you how to bring the numbers back to normal? And I said, yes, sir, you did. He said, that's all you need to know. And he said, unless it's genetic, and only God can change that, you bring the numbers back to normal, the body will take care of any problem that's there. I found that a very interesting statement. And it was obvious to me that when he was using first, second, third, and fourth dimensions of math to do the numbers, I couldn't even tell you what the first dimensions did, let alone the second, third, and fourth. But it was interesting what he told me. He said, bring those numbers back to normal, the body will take care of itself. You knew how to do that. And so in answer to your question, did he give me anything that we could work on to figure out those patterns and where things are? Unfortunately, I'd have to answer you. I don't know on that one. I just have the notes he gave us, and that little book that I put together and they gave Daily Manufacturing, and they put it on their internet about, the 50 most asked questions, how you get the numbers, what the basic numbers mean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the I numbers. That's all there. It all came from Dr. Reams, not me. And I don't know, it's 3 years ago, we were talking to some people and they said that what I put in that book wasn't accurate. When I got news for them, that came from Dr. Reams, not me. And I didn't change anything. And the people that do change it remind me of people that change the scriptures. You can't change what's right. It's either that or it isn't.
Amen to that. I agree. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I mean, I finished a book, and you have Annie over here who's trying to help me give visual descriptions of these concepts. You know, and the thing is if you go onto the RBTI forums, and I'm Betty, we're going to have you talk here in a minute, but if you go onto those RBTI forums, that's the one thing is you have a bunch of people who are talking about different ways of how to change those numbers, or that's not what Dr. Reams taught, or
no,
whatever. And but I'm, you know, I'm going to tell you from my clinical experience is that you know, there's a lot of things that change those numbers that were never taught about, you know.
Sure.
And clinically speaking, I have seen amazing things, you know, by learning these numbers. And I'm trying to get people to understand to use this as a method of analysis to give you a baseline of direction, you know, and give you interesting ideas of where it's going. But, you know, you said an interesting thing there that Betty probably might smack you for next time is you said that Dr. Reams told you when he was going to die and knew the numbers. And in Betty's book, she was questioning her dad, like, you know, you should have been doing something, don't you? And so that's kind of a, you know, I know you had a very close relationship, and I'm just pleased to have both of you here online. I want to give Betty the floor for a little bit. And Betty, just how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. My internet is fading in and out. I apologize for that. I'm in the middle of Timbuktu in Tennessee, so I'm just doing the best I can.
Good enough for me. Good enough for me.
We hear you loud and clear.
So
if I disappear, I'll be back shortly. So what do you want to know?
Tell us something.
Yeah, I was mad at him for not doing his program. I was very mad at him. He did not tell us he was sick. He did not tell us what was going on. Laverne and I ran tests on him, and we saw blood in his urine, and we got onto him big time, just like he would get onto us, you know? It's when the kids become the parent. And he said, oh, it's nothing. I can fix that. Don't worry about that. He was dead in 2 months.
He probably...
I was mad at him for a while. I had to get unmad, but I had to realize what he had gone through. I had to realize how difficult his journey was. And I forgave him real quick.
Yeah.
He needed the rest.
Along the lines of being able to tell time patterns from the patterns, I did a guy, his name was Dale Rudy, out in the eastern part of the state, Pennsylvania, one time. I was at his house and did a group of people, and we called Doc for the results and went from there. But when I did Dale, he got on the line. His wife was on one extension, he was on the other, I was on the third. And he said, Dale, what happened here to your central abdominal area? Did you have radiation? And he had a couple weeks previous to that. And Doc said, they burnt you through. The tissue is cooked. And he said, we can't replace burnt, cooked tissue. We can't do that. He said, only a miracle would save you. He said, Paul, are you going to be there tomorrow? And I said, yes, sir. He said, you take Dale's numbers tomorrow and call me back. And Dale, I'll tell you how long you have to live. And I did that. And I'll never forget it. We called Doc, and he gauged the numbers from the previous day to that day and told him the months, weeks, and days he would live based on the energy loss from yesterday to today. So it was just absolutely incredible. And then he said, and I'll tell you how to keep the pain down so you can enjoy your family before you go home. It was just, I didn't mean to interrupt your conversation, Betty, but...
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead.
That's pretty interesting situation there. From one day to another, to tell the actual energy loss and what day it actually expire, you know?
I heard that he made predictions of heart attacks and all types of things, like up to years before they occurred. Just blows me away the level of mathematics that he was looking at with these numbers. And you're talking first to fourth dimension. And I know I read a quote one time that Dr. Reams says, it all comes down to Euclid and Enid, which were mathematicians. And so, and if you look at the type of math, they were teaching geometric math, understanding geometry. And I know that all of the periodic table of elements breaks down to like 9 geometric patterns that go along with all of life. And so he had a way of looking at things from the geometry of what it is. And right now I'm laying a floor in my house with my son, and we're getting to this hallway that takes it like it goes this way and then cuts a little bit more this way before it opens back up. And I'm looking at, oh my God, how am I going to cut those pieces of flooring to make them fit where these angles are crazy? And I'm, and trying to add it up. And I'm like, we're going to cut small pieces, figure out these angles. And I hated geometry, 9th grade. And, but it just makes sense. What he did was just amazing of how he would figure some of this stuff out.
Yes, it is. It's incredible. There's a couple of things I've noticed in the last 3 or 4 years that would probably be a good idea to put in your criteria when you're working on people. And one of them is that 31-32 section of the eye. When you see a dilation there, I've never seen it wrong. Now, this isn't confirmed by Dr. Reams. This is me. I've never seen it wrong that it's a hiatal hernia. And you're probably familiar with the proper adjustment with a hiatal hernia, but if not, I'd like to show you that, because that can actually stalemate somebody's revival program with the number, because it causes so much problems internally if that's not fixed.
You showed me that, and I would love to go back and review that once again with you, because I kind of feel it. I get it.
I can't talk enough about that, Doc. I know you're up in Pittsburgh and I'm in Waynesburg. We're close enough. We can get together relatively easy on that, because I've come to the serious conclusion that, the bowels, the structure, all have an awful lot to do with your healing. Because that energy isn't flowing right in the system, it's going to stalemate you. But I'm sure the numbers over a period of time could overcome that. But I'd like to get together with you on that again, because that certainly helps a lot of people.
Believe me, I'd love to get together. Maybe I'll ride my motorcycle over there, and I'll take you out for dinner one night.
You don't have to do that, but be love to have you. There's just so many. You're a lot more familiar with most of these natural cures than I am, obviously, and your work shows that. But it never hurts if we add what we know to what we do know. 1 Corinthians 8:2 says, "When a man thinks he knows something, he knows nothing yet that he ought to know." And I keep thinking about that every day.
Oh, I know. People sit there and talk to me and try to tell me, "Hey, Doc, you're a genius." I'm like, you have no idea what I feel like. I know nothing. I know exactly where you're coming from.
Well, we took Dr. Reams for granted. He came to my house several times, and I was with him on the road, and got to drive him down to Mexico, and I've just always kicked myself and beat myself up. Why didn't I talk to him about some of these things that's so important? But, we didn't think about losing him, You just assume he's always going to be there, and that's not the way it is.
So, Betty, do you have a story for us that goes back and
your sister? I'll have to send you that picture when we was a little bit younger.
I'd love it. I'd flash him up and put him on the show right now. Hey, Betty, why don't you tell a story in regards to Paul, or something that just brings it all back? And, I know you guys were in Butler.
The internet is...
You're breaking up.
Yep, she's a little spotty.
I know. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, no. I'm so sorry. I have to get out of Tennessee in order to be effective. I'm quarantined. Are you picking me up?
Yes.
If you can get by the jiggers down there, you got it made.
Let me try to change channels here. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Okay, that works.
Let me try to change channels.
Okay. I don't know what I was going to say, Paul. You came up to me. Now, I do want to say, Paul, I always go back and just look and see. We have a few people. We have Diana. Hello. Leah, Marty D, Jackie. Hello. Good morning to all of you. Red Label. Good morning. Yes, this is fascinating stuff, people. I mean, when you're having these two people come on, you're hearing the stories of what brought all this together, you know, and in my book, Paul, what I was trying to tell people is that, you know, you're saying, hey, I've been exposed to all these various natural cures. But the one thing that I have found is that RBTI explains when that natural cure is not working for that person. So I have people who come and they go and get IV vitamin C or IV ozone, or they come in and they're doing the grape cure, or they're doing the asparagus, you know, juice every day, or they're doing Budwig's diet, or, you know, they're doing some of these things that have found to be natural cancer cures or something to that effect. And sometimes you'll see that those therapies move their numbers right towards improvement. And other times you're like, oh my God, you got to stop doing that. You know, what are you doing? And it's, you know, the IV vitamin C is just causing a massive cellular breakdown and they can't handle the load or something. And that's where I've used and trying to teach RBTI as a tool, because I don't see in the numbers, you know, flat tumors, and I don't see, you know, things like that, but I can see when there is probably a brain tumor, and I can see when there's certain patterns that say, hey, this is really nasty and we got to start working on this. And when I do see those really nasty patterns, and particularly because I look at live blood as well, and there's patterns in the blood that you can see that just speak cancer all throughout it, I will never, ever tell anybody that I see or you have cancer. It's just not the right thing to do. No. I will tell people that, hey, you have a lot of oxidative stress. I can recommend to people, like if you look, I just wrote an article, Paul, that's on, you know, the Doc Misak channel, and I'm more than happy to send you a link to read it. But I basically did another article, got published this month in Naturopathic Doctor News and Review, and I call it bioelectric chemistry. I'm trying to explain RBTI without using RBTI as a direct term, but bioelectric chemistry is what we are talking about. And I said a case study, and I gave a case report of how amazing RBTI gives us insights. What labs to order, you know, what was going on, gave the guy supplementation. He got out of, you know, 2 hours of functionality a day and not even being able to bathe himself, to being able to lifting his arms up, to all of his pains going away. And then the labs that I told them to go do just confirmed everything that I suggested was going on. And they ended up diagnosing him with a stage 4 cancer. But no way was I going to say that this is a cancer situation.
Right.
You know,
by the way, I noticed something when you were talking about the different cures, so to speak, that people do. There's one common denominator. Every one of those so-called cures is changing the body chemistry. If you change the chemistry of the liver, then you've got a good chance of getting well, whether it's a grape cure, the carrot cure, the whatever cure. But changing that chemistry is a vital thing if somebody's really sick.
Oh my God, yeah.
And if we don't change it, they're not going to get well. That's why Doc would have some people come to the retreat and tell other people they could do it at home. It depended on what had to be done on that chemistry, whether it was going to require a fast or not to actually break the chemistry, so to speak.
So people come to me, and people today are informed. They've got Dr. Google, and I've already told them that I don't accept referrals from Dr. Google. But you know, but in reality, people are informed today. So they come to me and they're already saying, I have adrenal fatigue, I have thyroid conditions, I have, you know, the particular diseases or whatever it may be. Yeah. But they expect there's a lot of natural supportive things out there to, quote, cure these disorders. And when they come to me and I'm turning around and saying, and they're asking me, well, what are you giving me for my adrenals? Nothing. I'm having you remove foods from your diet. I'm having you eat foods that are appropriate. I'm having you drink enough water. And I'm going to give you some basic minerals and vitamins based upon what I can identify that I know you need. And they're like, or what herbs are you going to give me for my adrenals? None. I want to see your cause and effect response. Well, what are you doing for my thyroid? Nothing. I might give you a little bit of algazam and some selenium to make sure that you can convert those from a mineral deficiency standpoint. But we're going to cause and effect. We're going to measure, and then we're going to repeat. We're going to measure again, and then we're going to make a choice from that point forward. And it really blows people away because they're coming and they're expecting to do something. And so many people go to clinics for hormonal imbalances. So many of them. And I tell people, if you fix the chemistry, these other things self-correct. People start going off their thyroid medication. They start getting off hydrocortisone and supporting their adrenals with steroids. And they, you know, the estrogens and the progesterones and those natural hormone therapy, they just stop needing them and things like that. And just like you just said, it's chemistry basis. It really is.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Reams said it all, which just concurs exactly with what you said. All problems, unless it's genetic, is a mineral deficiency, and you give the body those minerals so it can absorb it. And I think that's the critical thing on our numbers is, like, if you're acid, you're not going to absorb vitamin A and C, so you have to bring those pHs up to accept it, or you're not going to get well. So it goes along with everything you just said.
I agree completely. I do have a question. I have a couple clients that I just cannot get that saliva pH up. Their saliva pH is running about 5.8 to 5.9. I have done, they're giving them the minerals, giving them some vitamin D, eating foods based upon where their chemistry shows them in their range. I've even, support the liver. I've given them high amounts of B12. I see typically brings that up. And I do see B12 and folic acid deficiencies in the blood when I see that acid pH. I've even given them milk thistle or burdock. I have them drink burdock tea. I see that tends to help. But is there any tricks? I'm going to ask you and put you on the spot while you're here, that when you see that acid saliva pH and that liver's on fire and just trying to process things so fast, have you found anything that's been beneficial specifically for that?
Well, going back to the liver pH, Doc told us to correct the urine pH first, and the liver would follow. And he even gave a time frame on it. He said, expect to see a result in about 3 days. I don't know whether that helps you or not, but
see, I've got a patient, who's down in Virginia, and he's got really good control of his Brix, and his urine pH is hovering 6.3 to 6.6, but that saliva pH won't come over 5.9. And it's been, he worked with Michael Olsta for a year, drinking lemonade and water daily, religiously. And I'm like, for a year, Dr. Reams even suggested that alternating every half hour within 6 to 9 months, typically, it was a good thing to do until everything was fixed. And afterwards, it's always good to do lemon, but I can't put people on a regimen like that for life. I don't know your feeling on that as well.
I got an answer for you if you can hear me.
Yes, finally. Welcome, Betty.
Hopefully it will stay. I did change channels here. One of the things over the years that when I worked with my dad, he would not give anybody a diet if they were in range C, D, or E. He refused. He put them in the retreat. Now, we know how to get around that most of the time. We've learned how to do that. But I am saying that when you find that one person, you can't get that saliva pH to move, that person needs a retreat. And here's why. It takes energy for the body to heal itself. And if that person is out there trying to do it, all the work, him or herself, it's going to be using up the energy that the body needs to detox. Yeah. So we are working very hard to rebuild a retreat, and I'm hoping to have one within a year or sooner.
Oh, me too, Betty. I'm with you on that.
Hey, Brad.
We're totally with you on that.
So that's my answer for that, as best I know. Sometimes it takes longer than 3 days. Some people are a little more difficult to get through. Another thing that Dad said in his last year of life, he told me the reason why I put people in the retreat is so that they will detox quickly. It's a hard detox, but they can do it if they're resting. And he said, you usually throw up to get that liver to cleanse. Because if you don't, it's going to go out the other way and it's going to burn.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about this gentleman. He says about every 10 to 14 days, he has a liver dump and he gets this orange to greenish blast out of his butt that he, and it like, and I'm like, what have you been exposed to? I'm like, your liver is so stressed. I've been trying to figure it out. We haven't done an organic acid test, which we say I owe you a free consult, Betty.
You better hurry up. I might die before you get there.
You better
No,
not.
I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna. I'm just fine, folks. I was joking.
Hey, Betty, I like the haircut, by the way.
Oh, I did it. We're having an awful time finding hairdressers that want to wear masks.
Yeah, my daughter's supposed to come today for me because I can shave and I can take this stuff and kind of keep it short here. But I'm starting to grow that old mullet look like I used to have back in the 1980s.
Actually, it's not a haircut. It's tucked up in the back.
Okay. So, Betty, I'm with you on the aspect of retreats. This COVID stuff is really, we had 2 retreats planned. We should have had one in June. We were planning on having another one in August. It's holding
I don't
things
think
up.
we're going to get that.
No, we're not. There's no way. And so in the meantime, I'm focusing in on the book. I'm focusing in on that coalition and getting this stuff, that content put together. I have, Annie, get your gun. She's sitting there holding a gun to me. I mean, literally, we went the other day and shotguns. I should have Annie post a little video of me taking a shot. But we were shooting guns the other day at her house. She's got a bunch of acreage out there. And, but Annie holds a gun to me like, Doc, you've got to put this together. I cannot move forward until you give me this information, and she's working on these. Now you've seen the thumbprints and the little graphics and stuff that we put together. And Paul, I can't wait. I hope you can see it soon as well. When this book is done on an e-format, I'll send it to you guys so you guys can get an idea where I'm coming from. But I'm just trying to get the word out there. I'm trying to make people aware of this and same through, and then going through this coalition to keep it all in a private group membership, because even Dr. Reams was trying to do that back then from stories you told me, Betty. Is that correct?
That's right. He was, but that it didn't take. I honestly believe that his mission was to come and plant the seeds, and our mission is to pull that vine out into the sunlight and put it to work.
Yeah, I know. I heard him say many times that he wanted everybody to be able to test right in their homes. There wasn't any reason that people couldn't do their own chemistries. You can stay with the basics,
That's what we're doing, Paul.
Yeah,
that's exactly what we're doing. The thing is the problem, in my honest opinion, is the FDA and the AMA are going to turn around, and if you promote a system of measurement as a health-based system and it doesn't approve or align with what they teach, they're going to say that you're teaching a form of diagnosis and treatment that's not approved. Yeah. So that's why everything, Paul, is going to go through the Health Coalition. It's all private group membership. And so it's the only direction that we can actually use our constitutional right to the freedom of education and saying, look, we're not telling you to diagnose yourself. We're telling you to learn what you're, understanding some basic chemistry aspect of your body, that where here is a starting point that's considered perfect. And we're trying to help you to understand when this variable is away from perfect, this is a way you can support yourself to move that variable towards a state of health. It's a health-based model that just does not exist in this world.
That's right. That is exactly right.
And we're going to do it. We are going to do it.
Yes, we are. I agree. Thank you, Betty. So Betty, is there any other story? Would you like to tell a story of something that's historically, going on with your dad and,
What do I need to tell, Paul?
I'm sorry. What?
What do I need to tell? I spent a lifetime with the man. And then when I saw you for the first time, what was it, in 30 some odd years? I saw you in Pittsburgh last summer.
Yeah.
And you sat there and told stories of my father, just like you did at the beginning of this session today. And I can't tell stories like that. I grew up with a man. He was daddy.
Yeah.
It was my life. I was born to a scientist and I didn't know it. I thought he was full of it. I didn't want to do what he said. And he said, well, it's daddy. Who wants to listen to daddy?
He could definitely see it. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I could tell you another 50 stories like that are exactly right. They're exactly true. It's what he could do is beyond belief.
Absolutely. And he didn't tell us why we were doing what we were doing. He said, do as I say, not as I do. Don't ask questions. I mean, right. He didn't have time to answer the questions. He was busy.
How many times did you hear him say, go by the numbers?
I never heard him say that. We didn't even know he did that growing up. He didn't tell us.
Oh, he told me once.
He brought soil samples home. We helped in the laboratory. We knew he did laboratory testing. We thought everybody did. As I write in my book, I went to a little girl's house and she was showing me around the house. And this is the dining room, and this is the kitchen, and this is my room, and this is the garage. And there were 2 cars in the garage. What are you doing with cars in your garage? She says, well, that's where they go. What do you have in yours? I said, a laboratory. Where do you keep your laboratory?
Yeah.
They didn't invite me back. They thought I was a little strange. I have learned that I am.
So, Paul, how did you get in association with working with Dr. Reams? What were you doing with or for him?
I thought I was in pretty good physical health. I was always training and into different types of things like martial arts and could do 35 chins and all that wonderful stuff. But I always knew something was wrong. And a chiropractor friend of mine heard about Dr. Reams, and he said, I'm going to go see this guy. He's supposed to be able to do your oral and saliva and tell you everything about you. Why don't you go with me? And I said, well, I can't. Busy day, but call me, let me know what's going on. So he called me at 11 o'clock that night, and he just got back from going out eastern part of the state of Pennsylvania. And he said, Paul, you got to see this guy. He told me all about myself, and he told me some things that I didn't know. I said, well, like what? He said, well, not only did he tell me everything I already knew, but he said I have a tumor on the cord of the right testicle. And he said, I didn't know that till I felt it. And he also told me that it would be going in 2 weeks, just do what I tell it. I said, I got to see this guy. He said, well, it's too late. He went back to Georgia. I said, well, Georgia's not that far away. I'll call down in to go see if I can see him. And so I went down, and I'd always, all my life, I'd had lung problems. Always getting the colds and flus, you know, the works. Always coughing, always this, always that. And every time I'd go see the military doctors or any other doctor, they'd say, well, if everybody's in health like you, we wouldn't have any business. Ha, ha, ha. Well, when I got to Dr. Reams and he took my numbers, he picked up my card and he said, you have problems with your lung, don't you, son? And I said, are you a psychic or something? How did you know that? He said, no, it's in your numbers. He said, I'm no psychic. I do this with first, second, third, fourth dimensions of math. He said, you've got one of the worst cases of emphysema I've ever seen for a man your age. I said, emphysema? I never smoked. I've never been around pollution. I said, I don't understand. He said, you were born with a mineral deficiency in your lung and it's never been corrected. And that was true. And when I was in the 7th grade, my health teacher sent a note home to my parents and said, get this boy checked for TB. So that gives you an idea how much I must have been coughing when I was in grade school. But anyway, he said, I said, well, emphysema is incurable, isn't it? And he said, they only call something incurable, and you might want to put this in your book. They only call something incurable unless they have a drug to hide the symptom. Interesting comment.
Mic drop.
He he said, well, I'm not done. He said, you have a parasite, you have tapeworms. I said, tapeworms? He said, yeah. He said, oh, those will be gone in 3 days. That's no big deal. He said, most people have 2 or 3 kinds of parasites. You only got one. So I said, okay. I said, is there anything else? He said, yeah. He said, you have pain over your left hip when you sit, don't you? And I did. I changed my cushion around in my chair, on my car seat, and everything else, because every time I sit, it hurt. And he called that. And he said, and I said, well, I've been kicked in that area. I fell off a house. I was making excuses. He said, do you or do not have pain over the left hip when you sit? I said, yes, I do. He said, good. He said, that means the nerve endings haven't been taken ahead of the cell. You can feel it. He said, you have a sizable tumor over that left hip, and it's oddly shaped. It goes around your spine and down toward the prostate gland. I said, a tumor? He said, yes. He said, I said, well, can it be cut out? He said, don't you let anybody touch you with a knife. We'll take it out of there. You just do what I tell you. I said, I don't understand. He said,
Man.
just do what I tell you.
What's the doctor?
And so he said, you can do this at home. You don't even have to come to the retreat. So I went on lemonade 10 hours a day on the hour by the minute, and I did distilled water on the half hour. Oh, he also told me that my bowels were backed up. He said, you're very constipated. I said, no, you're wrong there, doctor. I go every day. He said, yeah, you go every day and you're 3 days late. He said, it'll take about a year to clean up those bowels. Anyway, so here I am, nailed to the wall with emphysema, tumor that you can't operate on, parasites, and emphysema. So when's my death date, right? And that's what I'm thinking. I said, knew there's something wrong, but I didn't. And you know, you're not seeing the natural cure, so you don't even know if it's going to work. But I figure this man can tell me what's wrong. He can also tell me how to fix it. And so I did that. And about 2 to 3 weeks out, I was losing weight. I turned yellow. I stunk. And I could see that I thought I was dying. So I called him up and I went back to Georgia to get tested again. I walked in, he picked up my card, and he looked at me and he said, why did you come down, Paul? And I said, well, look at me, Dr. Reams, I think I'm dying. He said, I finally have somebody doing what I tell them to do, and you think it's wrong. He said, you just keep doing what I tell you, and you're going to be just fine. You're actually ahead of the program. He said, you're already healing these areas. He said, it'll be about 3 months, everything will be gone. He said, you don't know much about your body, do you? And I said, obviously not. He said, why don't you come to my classes? And I said, I'd love to come to your classes, but I don't have any formal education. He said, good, you'll be easier to teach. So, and 3 months out, he did my chemistry, and he said, well, you know what minerals to take, Paul? Also, he had put me on Dolomite because obviously I had high ureas, which would have meant a heart attack up the road. But after the 3 months, and he did my chemistry, he said, you know what minerals to take, you know what diet to follow. And I said, well, what about the emphysema? He said, you don't have any emphysema, you got a new set of lungs. I said, what about the tumor? He said, what tumor? And so that's why I studied with Dr. Reams, and that's why I went in the field with him, and that's why I tried to pass the information on. Because I can tell you right now, I'm 78 now, but I guarantee you I wouldn't have seen 40 if that hadn't been for Dr. Reams. So
I find a lot of times it's really amazing that every now and then it's like people come and what do they expect? They expect to come to an office one time and you give them the magic recipe.
Yeah,
here,
right,
do this and you go home and be healthy. And it really doesn't work that way. But when I test people and say, hey, stop eating these foods, you know, that makes a huge difference versus trying to teach them how to test their numbers and recognize when they're eating those foods. And it amazes me. I'll run into people or they'll usually run into me, Dr. Misak, you know, at the store. And I hadn't seen these people for years. And I'm like, wow, how you doing? They're like, well, I did what you told me here, and I never had that again, you know? And it's just amazing how, you know, natural medicine is so real. It is so real, you know.
Well, we all die from lack of knowledge. It's that simple. And and when you think about it, it's not that difficult to understand the fact you need minerals to survive, and you need water to survive, and you need to clean up the structure, the bowels, get the minerals, the whole bit, or you're not going to make it. You know, it's going to be that simple. But there isn't any question in my mind that I didn't meet Doc by accident and was able to pass this information on to other people, God willing. That's the way I look at it.
So a couple odd things that I would have a question about is like, I knew Killian, Bob Killian was up north. He was recommending. There's some odd stories of like Bob Killian would have a lot of people do Heinz yellow mustard. And when would Dr. Reams have people drink Heinz pickle juice? And, you know, give me some of the ideas of weird foods that he would have people eat for specific reasons. Do you have any information on stuff like that? Because those are stories that I just don't find in the in all the information I've read.
Well,
Heinz pickle vinegar was when you were too alkaline and couldn't get the alkalinity down.
Yeah, and it helps the digestion. But some of those basics are just kind of golden rules that we follow in life, you know, like the apple cider vinegar and, you know, and so on. But Killian was a sort of an interesting fellow. I never got to know him very well, but he came to 2 or 3 of the classes we had up at Butler when Ray Massner was teaching up there, or Dr. Reams was there. Anytime that there was something like that going on, Killian would come, but he'd never say anything. He'd just kind of sit in the back and take notes and leave. And some of the people, after he died, some of the people that I tested, I questioned whether he was actually following Doc's program or not. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
It's like Challen Wyckoff, you know, he's going now, but he did a lot of things Dr. Reams never taught. And so, but he called it the Reams thing, just like Killian called it the Reams thing. And Killian's wife is now testing people, calling it the Reams thing.
Yeah, and Challen's assistant has taken over, and she says that she is able to make the recommendations on the numbers based upon what Challen taught her. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. But God bless her. I hope things work out well for him. But I know one thing. If you don't follow what Doc said, it isn't going to work. You go changing it around, it just doesn't work. And he proved that.
Right.
And
one of the things I've noticed, Paul, just is, you know, like you start putting people on that lemonade and water fasting, and today's world is toxic. What they're breathing, what people are putting on their skin, what people are exposed to in their waters, what's on their foods. The amount of toxin level is just amazing. And you put somebody on that original fast, some people are going to end up in the hospital. They just don't have the capacity to detox. And one thing that I've done is instead of doing the the hour, lemonade and water, is I have at least had people just do lemonade, because I can't turn around. They're not in a retreat setting, and I'll have them mix that 1 ounce to 9 ounces ratio of lemon to water, but only drink like 3 ounces after the meal to stimulate the digestive, to get the enzyme activity. And just because that little bit of lemon does work, it helps put people numbers in a very capacity that I can handle seeing them every 3 to 4 weeks, and they don't feel like they have to come and see me every day, or to get sick, or they're calling me and say, hey, I'm in the hospital. What do I do?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Reams said the lemon was the only food God gave us that was aeonic. All other foods are cationic.
Right.
So that has a lot to do with how the lemon works and why it works so much better than others. The body doesn't have to change the chemistry to use it. It falls right into place to cleanse and flush that liver and change the chemistry. But and he said that's the only food that isn't chaotic.
Right. I always explain it, Paul, with that classic commercial, Dawn takes grease out of your way. You know, that grease and clumping is all cationic clumping, and soaps are called anionic surfactants. One drop, boom, you know, and all that grease went away. And I'm like, listen, when you're doing that with your cationic, you know, foods, you're creating the ability to get more energy from that food while that lemon is normalizing the pH of the bile, while that lemon is providing the amino acids to make over 5 billion enzymes, while that lemon is, you know, helping just normalize and, you know, create that friction and that resistance to generate more heat from and energy from your meals, you know. And so, you know, that was the logic that was in my brain when I did that, because I found that in reality, when I was starting people on that alternating all day long stuff with that you have less than 5% compliance in today's day and age, you know, unless it's that person who's really sick. And so I still have various people that I will put on an alternating, you know, lemon and water program. But fasting them, I usually am not fasting people on that level until I see a stability in their chemistry for a few months.
Well, you said it all a little bit ago when you said some of these people are going to end up in the hospital because, first of all, they're not regimented enough to actually follow the program correctly and stay on it, realizing they're going to get worse before they get better. So they end up in the hospital and blame you, you know. Right. So you got to be careful. I think on the 5 ranges, probably 4 and 5 should never be tried to do at home. They need supervision.
Oh my God.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. And I warn people time after time and again, don't put somebody on lemon water and fast them, because here's what's going to happen. If they can't check their numbers twice a day, they don't know what to take and what to do. We didn't just put people on lemon water and distilled water and let them go at the retreat. We tested twice a day. We adjusted according to their individual numbers. Everybody didn't always get the same thing. People thought they did, but they didn't. And here's another thing. If you tell somebody to go home and fast, or even put them on lemon water, if they have a serious problem, they're going to get real sick when they start to throw off that toxicity, and it's going to scare the holy daylights out of them, and they're going to run to the hospital, and the hospital will say, well, what have you been doing? And they're going to say, well, I went to so-and-so over there, and he or she said, and they're going to say, oh, don't pay any attention to them. They're just quacks.
I have, you know, I have the sauna, the hyperbaric chamber, the colonics, the foot baths, the biomass. I have all that stuff in my office, and people are blown away when they walk away from the first visit. And on all the detox, I say, nope, 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 nope. I just go down the line. I'm like, what do you mean? I thought I needed to detox. I'm like, yeah, but you have to be able to handle a detox. We'll get there in a month or two, but let's get, you know,
exactly.
Hold on. So
you have to be careful.
Yep.
You have to be careful.
I heard Doc say one time about, he said, I'd rather be a live quack than a dead duck.
Yeah, I had a baby duck when I was little, and my father named it Dr. Quack.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a quack was in those days, but boy, I do now, and I'll tell you what, I'll pick them anytime over the other ones.
Sometime when we get together, Doc, I'll go over some of these other cases that I saw Doc do that just still baffles my brain. Like he could tell us, oh, I'm sorry. Am I interrupting someone?
Nope.
No, somebody was interrupting me. That's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. That one of the fellows that I sent down the retreat, he was shocked when Doc told him, you had a chiropractic adjustment 2 days ago, didn't you? And he had. And he said to his buddy, he said, why did you tell him I was to a chiropractor? Said, I didn't tell him anything. So Doc could see even those intricate things like that, he could pick right out. And it's just, we could go on and on and on about that. But I think we all know.
It's kind of, I mean, sometimes I'll sit there, and I've made it a point that when people come to my office, I do not read their chart. I look at their numbers. I discuss the numbers. I look at their blood. I discuss the blood. And then I tie a picture together. And many times the blood or the the dry blood layers or those numbers, like tell me things. And I'll say, you probably have this. And they're like, wait a minute, I didn't even put that in my intake questionnaire. It's uncanny. Hey, we have like just a couple minutes left. And so I'm going to have both of you, just what do you want a take home message for people? What would you like to say? I'd love to have you back another time, but what would be a take home message? Betty, what would you have to say for people?
Take home message: get a Chihuahua. Their pitch of their bark makes vitamin C available to the system. Follow the retreat dog. Be careful. Be careful with what you do. Seek help. Ask for advice. We have Facebook pages out there. I'm teaching an online basic foods program that will keep you safe and out of trouble. Dr. Misak is there. You know where he is. We've got people all over the place. We're trying to put together a program that will build a retreat. Keep us in your prayers. We want to be the light in the darkness.
I think it's a very important thing to tell anybody that's interested in it. If you're not willing to change the chemistry, you're going to do more harm to yourself than good by trying to change it than quitting, because you confuse the body. You mix up that chemistry. Doc was very clear on that. You don't start it unless you're going to finish it.
Good point. Good point. But I don't want to be I have so many people that come to see me and they're sitting there telling me about, well, I had these diet. I'm like, look, I am not your food police. That is not my job. You are only responsible for your own diet. All I can do is guide you. But if you ate what you ate yesterday or the day before, because it blows them away. I'm like, what did you eat 3 days ago? And I can look at their numbers and I'm like, what did you have pork, or whatever it may be. Pork always shows in the numbers. And
that's an interesting thing, because at the retreat, if somebody didn't continue the proper diet and they went back to the unclean foods, they would lose a day, because they took out more energy than they put in trying to get rid of the trash they put in their system. So I think that's important to get across to people. Yeah. You are what you eat, and you eat this garbage. Like when I asked him about pork, he said the nearest thing to pork in a laboratory is pus, P-U-S, pus. And that cured me on pork real quick. And also, people aren't aware of the Arizona salmonella that you can get from pork. And that's that'll put a hard, thick coating on the digestive system. You can't digest food through it, and it'll kill you. And that's a spore form of trichinae in pork. I don't think you can get it anyplace else. So pork, just exactly what Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy says, don't even touch it, let alone eat it,
Amen. People, I love my bacon.
Yeah. I'll tell me you better get used to turkey bacon or soy bacon, because that garbage. Well, to go back on what I just said, I think that's a very important thing to tell people, that if you don't follow this and you eat something your body has to try to get rid of, you just lost a day of healing. You lost a day. You went backwards.
Yeah, or more. I actually see it in the numbers about 5 days, before you can say that the numbers start going back to normal. Dr. Reams did mention that it takes 7 days once you make a change before the numbers become stable again based on that change. So I tell people who are testing at home, I have them test every 10 to 14 days, a full set of numbers twice in a day. But for them to monitor daily their urine's pH and their bricks, just to see, to learn their pattern of what food's doing for them.
Sure.
Listen, guys, I would go on for an hour or more with you. My son's visiting. He's driving back to North Carolina today. I definitely want to have you guys back on. I thank you so much for being on.
One other thing Doc said that I found to be true with all the cases that I ever was able to associate with, when he talks about backed up bowels, and that would also include diverticuli, pockets, and things of that nature, he was very clear on the fact that it would probably take a good year to heal it, get it right. A year. Wow. Where most other things are weeks or days or a couple of 3 months. Those bowels it's a critical thing whenever, and that was right with me. When he said I was seriously constipated, it took about a year before my bowels were right. Yeah. I didn't know what good
I do. I use those colon cleansing kits that you take in clay and fiber and grab and pull those plaques and stuff out of the gut. But you can't do that until people have at least been doing the program for about 6 months before you even talk to them about that, because they will just get so sick, and they're not ready for it.
Dr. Reams said that if you have a stool in your system over 22 hours, he said the normal digestion was 18 to 22 hours. He said if it's in there over 22 hours, you're dumping 36 different toxins back into the body.
Wow.
That's a very interesting comment, isn't it?
Yeah. I want to hear more of them. But, hey,
back into your system because you're not eliminating.
Exactly.
So that's something that you might want to reiterate on in your book. And because I don't think people realize another thing too is Dr. Reams talked about the energy all the time, the energy that we produce from the foods we eat. And I think it might be important to include how the actual energy flows in the body internally, and the stalemate that a bad liver or a spine out of alignment causes on allowing the energy not to flow properly.
Oh my God, yeah, I would agree.
So
Dr. Reams talked about everything going through the liver and then going to transformer glands before everything gets converted to literally electroplating and making new cells where they're needed, electrically being attracted to that area. Well, it's interesting that those transformer glands align with acupuncture points on the body and showing that it's all energy movement. And oh my God, this stuff is amazing.
Unbelievable. Yeah. I don't know whether I gave you that book or not. I actually got it at one of Dr. Reams' classes. It was Contact Healing. And it shows all the contact points on the body that are the acupuncture points that you can actually just press.
No, please. I'm totally interested in that.
Me too.
I'll definitely get that to you, because it's critical to our healing.
Amen. I'm open. Thank you.
I mean, like right here, you press, it's for the eyes. You press here, blood pressure, and things like that. And it gives the exact spots and gives you a total description of them. It's the acupuncture point.
I'm holding that one to you.
I promise you, I'll get you all. I've got several copies in my office. I'll get a hold of one of you and get all. I really need to get your addresses. I'll send it to you.
Okay. I'll send my address to Brad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I'll send my address to Brad.
Yeah, send it to me. I'll send you one on no charge. I'll tell you what, though, that book, I had it from Dr. Reams' classes. I put it in my I'll call it my library of things with Dr. Reams. And I must have been 10, 12 years out on that. And one day I'm looking through that and I see that booklet. And I thought, do I need my head examined? How come I haven't been using this? And then with your people, like my son, a massage therapist, does deep. It's perfect for him because it's all the spots you need to get to those areas that need the healing.
That's awesome.
It works extremely well. And that's something you could actually include right into your book, along with.
Annie, there's more practical aspects.
Yes, I'm in.
That's our job, to pass on this information. And I don't want to ever seem to any of you like I'm condemning someone or think I know more than somebody else. We're all in a learning process. Back to 1 Corinthians 8:2. We don't know anything.
Exactly. And Dr. Misak, you asked if I had anything parting to say, and yes, I do. And this is very serious. If you want to know what RBTI can do for you, look at me. I'm 72 years old. I turned 72 years old just a few days ago. I have never had a facelift. I could use a little one right here, but I'm working on that.
Vanity.
Well, you can try.
I don't color my hair. I do put a little bit of eyeliner on so people know I have eyes and eyebrows, and that's it.
I try.
And that's all due to RBTI. And if you want to have that kind of success in your life, contact me. I'll help you.
Hey, every day is a gift.
Every day is a gift.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There you
And I
go.
thank God.
I'm
Praise
anxious to
God
get that.
always.
I'm anxious to get you that book, but I want to see what you think of it when you get it. Contact
Thank you.
me. You're going
Great.
to love it.
That's
It works so
fantastic.
well with what we do. You know, it's just there. You know, it's perfect.
That's
Hey, guys,
wonderful.
we do got to end this.
Thank you,
I
Annie.
do have to go.
Thanks, guys.
Hey,
God
God
bless
bless.
you.
We'll be in
Doc.
touch.
Thank you,
Take care
Paul.
now.
Thank
You
you,
too.
Brad, wherever you are.
Yep.
Take
Thank
care
you.
now.
We'll see
Give me
you
those
guys.
addresses so I can get that book to you.
Thank
Right
you.
away.
God bless everyone.
Bye.
Okay.
Oh,
Brad, I think we're done here.
we are down.